It's a pleasure to follow the Right Honourable Gentleman. We don't agree on everything, and I have spent the last 2 years working hard for his opponent, Andy Street, who was elected last Thursday. But I thank him for what he said and for what was a decent and fair campaign in the West Midlands, which dignified democracy and which did all the main candidates very considerable credit. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm a fan of the mayoral system, and I think that often Andy Street will be best placed to secure the right economic judgments, the jobs, the training, and the levelling up. And of course, as has been said already in this debate, levelling up is not just geographical, it's also generational. And this is the first young generation since the First World War which does not believe it will be better off than its parents' generation. So that is an important issue. But the devolution of power, part of the answer, of course, to the constitutional questions about Scotland, Ireland and the United Kingdom, is very important. And I think that in the West Midlands it works well, and I strongly encourage the Chancellor to give Andy Street every possible support in the work that he is doing. In particular, levelling up funds, which we would like in the royal town of Sutton Coldfield as well. I hope very much we will be in the second tranche, because that public spending is absolutely critical to securing successful development, sometimes in places which ostensibly are quite well off, but need that spending if they are to succeed. And areas like mine have to go through Birmingham City Council. Inevitably, there are differences, political difficulties and differences of emphasis, and I urge the Treasury to consider that. The second point I wish to make is about the point 7. I very much hope the Chancellor will have heard the words of the former Prime Minister yesterday, the Father of the House, others in the House. The gracious speech calls for, quite rightly, for girls' education, probably the most effective way of changing the world. But on girls' education, the Prime Minister's particular priority, we have seen a cut of 25% from £789 million in 2019, projected to be £400 million this year. That is a very substantial cut. The best UN agency, UNICEF, looking after children, assessed by the British government to be the best in the multilateral aid review, has been cut back by 60%. These are very, very serious issues. I give way to the Right Honourable Gentleman.
I'm grateful for the Right Honourable Gentleman, and I thank him for his kind words. Would he agree that at the G7 and later at COP this year, Her Majesty's government will stand a far better chance of encouraging sign-up to the new IDA programme if it was prepared to commit ahead of those important events to the 0.7 target?
Well, he knows very well my very strong support for the 0.7. The point I am making in my remarks today is that the damage which has been done to Britain's reputation, quite apart from the poorest people in the world, is very severe indeed. And I worry that the Treasury doesn't appreciate fully these factors. He said today, when I asked him whether he would, and he very generously gave way to me, when I asked him whether he would consider reinstating the 0.7 once the economy reaches pre-COVID levels, and he said the damage that was done might be too great for that. I hope very much he will think about those words. But he also mentioned that we have given £400 billion in taxpayer support, quite rightly and highly effectively, thanks to his successful stewardship, to support our efforts to combat COVID. We are talking, on the cut that he has made down to 0.5, of 1% of that £400 billion. But the damage it is doing to Britain's reputation, quite apart from the poorest in the world, is very, very savage indeed. And so I urge him to announce as soon as he can that we will stand by our promise that we made just a year ago in the general election. We will stand by the promise that the British government made on the floor of the General Assembly at the UN, and that we will no longer seek to balance the books on the backs of the poorest people in the world. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, the third point I wanted to make was referred to in the gracious speech. It is about social care. I'm disappointed, obviously, that the government hasn't yet set out quite how they wish to proceed on this matter. But it does seem to me that this is a major and important reform. It needs to be agreed by all parties. Like pension legislation, it has a long tail. But much of the work has already been done by Sir Andrew Dilnot, and I hope that the government will look carefully at those plans and decide whether or not they are able to perhaps tweak them, but to implement them. And in my own constituency, the Royal Sutton Coldfield Cottage Hospital, we have big plans for this cottage hospital, but they require us to understand what the national priorities on social care will be, and I hope this legislation will come forward, possibly with the assistance of the Right Honourable Member, our honourable friend from South West Surrey, and his experienced select committee, who might have a role in assisting the government in refining those plans and aspirations. Now, the final point I want to make, Madam Deputy Speaker, is about assisted dying, where I am the co-chair of the all-party group on this matter. And I know that there are very strong feelings in the House on this issue. I greatly respect those who completely disagree with me on this matter, not least since I've completely changed my own mind since I first entered the House many years ago. And those of us who are supporting dignity in dying want a very tight and narrow change made to the law. And we believe that this could be the great liberal reform of this Parliament. 84% of our constituents, 84%, Madam Deputy Speaker, want to see this sort of reform introduced, and we know that in Southern Ireland, Scotland, New Zealand, Spain, Portugal, Austria, Germany and Australia, significant advances on this are being made. So I ask, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we consider as parliamentarians allowing our constituents who are terminally sick and within 6 months of dying to be able to exercise their own choices and not be forced to endure a level of pain and of indignity they do not wish to suffer. Thank you.